The digital transformation site runs on Vue.JS, and I'm going to go ahead and walk through the core structure here. I'm sitting inside of the directory of the application, which is BetaWorks, and I'm going to go ahead and open it up in the file system so we can refer to it. And before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and show you a diagram of the site. Now I'm going to go ahead and project here. And as you can see, the site starts off with the main.js file. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. I'm going to move into the source directory and open up main.js. And as you can see here, we have a few imports. The Vue import is simply the framework of the Vue.js framework. And then we have an app and we have a router. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you that on the diagram here. As you can see, I have main, which loads app.vue and router.js. And these define the large core functionality of the application. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you router first. This sets up or defines the components and routes for the application. So I'm going to go ahead and expand the window a little. And as you can see there, it once again refers to Vue, and in this case to another component that is part of the framework, which is the router. Now after that, I pull in a bunch of different components that are defined through the application. And as you can see here, the first block is the core sections. These are the landing pages or the landing components for each of these sections. We have a home, blockchain, security, AI, and cloud. After that, I have a number of categories that I will define eventually as all of these get created. But for now, I've simply created the blockchain one. And so as you can see here, I have a landing page and the name of the component is landing page. And after that, I have a number of sections within blockchain. This one's blockchain basics, then keys and components, then live components. All of that gets defined within that first section, and it is now available for us to create routes. And each of those routes, and when I say routes, this means something that the user on the browser can type, and each of those components will get loaded. So as you can see here, I have the routes defined, which is an array, and each of those routes has three components: the path, the name, and the component. So the name is the pretty name that we use, the path is what the user actually types in the browser, and the component is the component that gets defined in the previous line. So as you can see here, home in this case is on line 5, and it is used here on line 41. Now the next section here, so that's just simply the home route, is the blockchain section. And in this case, I am using child components. So I define a blockchain component and then a bunch of children. And this corresponds to all of the different components that I have. And in the old style, that would have been all the different pages that I have under blockchain. So you can see here I have path block, chain, Coinbase, distributed hash, and so on. Now I will have eventually the same thing for all of the other categories. Now there were two things that got loaded. If we go back to the diagram, one of them was the routes, and as I mentioned, this is the core routing of the entire site, where you define all of your components and then you define your paths. And then I have app.vue. And so let's go ahead and take a look at app.vue. And as you can see here, app.vue is a typical component for Vue.js that typically has three parts to it. The first one is the layout, the HTML, the tags there between template open and template close is that section. The second one is JavaScript, and then there would be a third one, which would be styles. In this case, I'm setting my styles globally, which it's not a good practice, but it's a good way of setting universal styles for all of the pages. Now, in this case here, you can see that I am importing, in this case, a single component, which I'm calling navigation, and it's also defined within the structure of the site, and I'll show you what that is in a minute. And then I have, once I defined it, I'm making it available here. This is Vue.js language. I'm making it available as one of my components. And then I set it here on navigation. Now, app.view is the shell into which I will put everything in the application. And so that is here the router view. And remember, that gets defined within your main.js, the first file that I showed you, which loaded two things. It loaded app.view and router.js. So these are available here, and I'm setting a placeholder for all of the things that I will bring in from all of the paths, and they will go in here in this line 6. Now, in addition to that, I'm only putting in one other thing, which is navigation, which I define here, and that's that navigation.view. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Within components, I have a navigation.view. And as you can see here, this is simply a navigation bar. And so this first part, again, this is a template as well, is just simply the nav bar. And so as you scroll here through all of this, it is simply the HTML for the nav bar. Now, in addition to that, I have some code here in the script section that does turning off and on the active part of the navigation bar that you're in, depending on which path you're at. But this is just simply a navigation bar. Now, if we go back to our diagram, we'll see there that we have app.view and router.js that we just went through. And then next, I'm going to show, before I go ahead to that first component that I'm going to load into the section that I showed before, which is this one, the router view, I'm simply pointing out here that within app.view, two things get loaded. And you can see there the navigation view component that we just took a look at, and then the router view, which is a placeholder for all of the routes that I'm going to bring in. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you one route, which is one of the core components, which is blockchain, and one of the children routes to blockchain. So as you can see there, I am going to show you next blockchain, and this is one other component that gets defined. And again, all of those were defined here in router.js, but they're being brought in through that component in app.view, which is the router view. And then from that blockchain, I'm going to do something similar because I have children to that which I did before. This is going to have a navigation within itself. So you can imagine there that there's one top level navigation, and then there is a sub level or a sub navigation that it's only relevant to blockchain. That will have a router view itself, and then into that I will bring in an example, which in this case is #view. That'll be more apparent once we move to the site, but I'm going to go ahead and show you the code briefly. So I will go ahead and show you blockchain. And so if we move to the views and I take a look at blockchain, you can see here that blockchain is similar to app.js in that it has very little. It has a navigation bar, and in this case, notice that the path is different, and this navigation is only specific to the blockchain section of the site. And once I define it, I can then bring it in as one of the tags. And so if I were to show you that, we can go ahead and move back to the components, move into blockchain, and then if I show you the navigation, you would see here that this is simply looking at the navigation that is relevant for blockchain. So let's go ahead and take a look at the site before we go too deep, and I will make some comments. Let me just close these windows here. I will make some comments on the navigation. So I'm going to go ahead and run the site, which we do that by doing npm run serve. And this site is now up and running. I'm going to go ahead and open up my browser. Go ahead and drag the window over. And I'm going to go ahead and move into localhost. And you can see here that this is the core navigation of the site. Now I have blockchain, and as you can see there, those are the paths that we defined within blockchain. If we were to go back to routing, let me go ahead and get back to router, and we move down to the blockchain section, you'll be able to see that somewhere I have landing page, and that loads the landing page component. And so if we mouse over here, you can see there on the preview of the link that that's there. And so if I click on here, notice that I have the top bar, and if I click on blockchain, I'm now inside of blockchain. Notice that my path here is blockchain / landing page, and then I have some navigation that is specific to blockchain. In this case I have 3, so it's a little bit of a richer case for the 3 different sections. But then if I click on hash, I'm now going to load the hash component that is a child of blockchain. So if you take a look here, you'll see that my path is blockchain / hash. I'm bringing in a navigation bar that is specific to blockchain, to this section. And then inside of it, I have the hash. And this is actually a working example. This little identicon is specific to no content for the hash. And if I type orange, you can see there that we get something that looks a little bit like a Pac-Man. If I take it off, we go back to the no content identicon. If I bring back orange, we get the same one back. So this is a simple overview of the website. You can dig through the code and confirm that you understand the functionality. And if you're going to add any components, they need to be part of the navigation of the paths that we established in the router. And I will be taking pull requests for all of those components. So that's it for this one.